So I have here what looks like most collections, things that don't have a whole lot of bearing with each other, but just are simply things that speak to me, that I love for particular reasons, or items that have a storyline that go with them. And that was one of the categories of doll creation that were done quite often, were dolls that were created that either represented historical personages or were dimensional manifestations of figures that were drawn in children's storybooks or in popular legend. And here's just a quick few we're going to run through. My big pal on the side. Wow, is he incredible? This is a Palmer Cox Brownie. He was made in 1899, and you'll never guess who he was made by. He was made by the Schoenhood Company. They showed him at an 1899 exhibition of dolls, or of their toys, and he was shown with several other of the characters from the Brownie series. Now, Palmer Cox was a great, interesting story. If you have our catalog, I have a story about him at the beginning. We have a wonderful collection of Brownies, probably 35 or 40 lots of Brownie figures, bisque figures, paper mache knotting figures, little novelty toys, beer steins from the very famous Keith and Donna Kaonis collection that are in this catalog. And I brought him along because he's a great pal. What's really nice about him is he has these wonderful articulated arms, so you can pose him in different ways, and the very classic long, skinny legs, really shapely, but long, skinny legs of all of the Palmer Cox Brownies. Happy creatures they were designed to be, designed from the illustrations done by Palmer Cox, a Canadian turned American, an immigrant we welcomed at the time, and still welcome. And we were very, very pleased to have all of the drawings he did, and he became probably one of the most prolific licensing people in early 1900s. And speaking of licensing people, let's talk about this, because this would probably be the most prolific of all of the licensed artwork dolls that were done. The famous dolls of Rose O'Neill, the Cupid doll of Rose O'Neill. And I'm showing here to you one of the rarest that we have ever seen. This is Cupid Soldier. He is standing with his cane, with his arm in a sling, with his uniform. He's glancing pretty mischievously at that Red Cross nurse who has her arm around his back. And he has the interesting paper label on the front of him, Cupid Hero. It seems to be a series that Rose O'Neill designed probably during the World War I era, and she did have these unique paper labels put on, Cupid Heroes, designating from that series, and represented wounded soldiers or sailors from every nationality and every group. Very, very special piece. Now, while we're talking about designs that were made from children's books, in the mid-1800s, a German children's book written by Wilhelm Busch described the antics of Max and Moritz. And these were, we call them mischievous now, but they were pretty bratty kids. They were always in a lot of trouble, but they were so beloved as story characters that it continued on. And in this country, now it would be maybe 60 years later, they reappeared in their manifestation, reappeared in the famous comic strip, The Katzenjammer Kids, as Max and Moritz. And who I'm showing you here is Moritz with his very typical forelock red auburn hair. And one of the great things about those dolls is they had uniquely modeled bodies that were used on Max and Moritz only, with their little sculpted shoes and socks. Very, very distinct. And look at this fellow, what a great face. And he has his little flirty eyes, his wide smile, and he's full of trouble, but you're still gonna love him. Very rare, and they're wonderful. And I have an all-bisque version of Max, which is also there, and which is, again, very rare to find. This is what I mean when I say they appeared in so many different manifestations, from bisque to all bisque to cloth to very licensed toys. Max and Moritz were very, very popular, and this is a wonderful all-bisque figure of Max. There he is. I wanted to show you, again, this is really kind of off the topic, but I'm always interested in dolls that were designed by particular artists, and in a sense, For example, Moritz was designed by a particular artist, and the Brownie was designed by a particular artist. But some of the artists who designed dolls were more classical artists. And this Van Rosen of Paris was a designer of sculpted animals and sculpted soldiers. He did a wonderfully, really prestige, award-winning work at the turn of the 1900s. And she also made a few dolls. And this is one of her very, very rare dolls, signed Van Rosen at the back of the head with a very highly characterized face. And anytime you can find a Van Rosen doll, I want to see if, yes, I can see her mark here very closely, so maybe you want to see it because it's a very different kind of mark than you usually find on a doll. It's almost like a raised seal design. And she has a wonderful story about this woman as well. And I put out our pal here partly because I'm watching season 2 of The Crown, and partly because she was a really interesting person, and partly because this is a splendid wax doll. I mean, when we talk about in the doll world, people tend to talk about portrait dolls. It's a portrait doll, portrait doll. Sometimes they simply mean it had great luxury to it. Other times they mean it was a portrait of a particular person. Sometimes that person is not really identifiable. And more, it's reflecting a style of the time, a style of the face, a style of the clothing. And sometimes, as in this rare occasion, there isn't any one of us who have any question whatsoever of who this doll is a portrait of. This is the Queen, the good Queen Victoria. Very, very superb modeling of face, very wonderful regal expression. The doll came originally from the very famous Billy Nelson Terrell collection, who specialized in celebrity figures. And when we sold her collection, it was purchased by another collector, and now they're moving it on. And you have another opportunity for her. She's an absolutely wonderful portrait doll. And now, I want to show you one other, staying in the storybook line. We have these little fellows right here, Jean qui rit et Jean qui pleure. John who cries, John who laughs. From, again, a mid-1800s children's book in France, talking about these two fellows. And they were not unlike Max and Moritz in Germany. They were kind of a little more, the storylines were a little more moralistic, though, showing what would be good behavior of a child and bad behavior of a child. But the faces were so distinctive. And if you recognize it, you've seen this face several times. You see it in Bijoux' smiling or crying character. You'll see the Bruin. You will see, these are wonderful. Look at their suits, by the way. He's holding, the happy one's holding a little bird. Here's a candy container with the same faces. The little children as babies. And when they pulled them out, there was candy. It was a hidden candy container. And that face was so popular, it was even appeared in German-made dolls. In this case, a wonderful example of Jean qui pleure, John who cries, and it, by the way, has a Blue Ribbon Award from Chicago in 1993. But this doll was made about 1910, and it has just an absolutely wonderful face and costume and beautiful bisque. And just to show you some wonderful German art characters that are so rare you just don't find them at all, and because we have this opportunity, you need to see these. This wonderful girl, it's an example of how when the Germans were making their art character dolls in the 1908 to 1910 period, they could make them in various ways. This is a very, very rare painted eye character 208, which came with painted eyes or glass eyes, these painted eyes being much rarer. And here she is in this wonderful antique mariner costume. A maker that people do not often think about is Franz Schmidt. They think of him as making little pretty child dolls, but he made a great series of painted eye characters, and I think for collectors looking to find a little hidden secret area where they can pick some rare characters up, this is a good opportunity. Anything marked with the FS and then his various model numbers, and here's a wonderful little pouty-eyed character that it would be a good choice for you. Now, the ones that everybody looks for, though, are the Cameron Reinhardt characters. I mean, I think it's kind of considered that they are the top of the line. And we have here two examples which are basically the same face, but one made with the wig. I'm going to pull this off so you can perhaps see them a little more clearly. And let me come around and make sure their faces are posed exactly looking the same way, so you can see that it is really the same model, with the one exception. We have the model, they marketed him as Walter, and then we have the other one that was marketed as Carl. But the same doll, and very, very rare and very precious, and both wearing these absolutely wonderful original costumes. And let me turn it from the side so you can see them that way. Now, actually, the Cameron Reinhardt molds were poured by the Simon & Halbig firm, and probably for that reason, Simon & Halbig decided they could do a few character dolls, art character dolls of their own, and they did them from the 150 series. And we have here two examples of them, one being this really beautiful little slender-faced girl, a little bit older child she's representing. See how they've slimmed her face down, a little bit longer throat, and the features not as big eyes, so they're more designed to be an older child, and very, very beautiful, again, with the painted eyes. And her little friend, collectors refer to him as the little Duke. I don't know why, except I guess he looks like a little prince. And he has sculpted hair, this really rare brown hair, and I want to turn it around. And actually, at the same time, because I didn't do this, I'm going to turn Walter with him so you can see in both cases how they worked and sculpted the hair to have great detail. Both of these being painted eye. Painted eye. Very, very different. Look at the side profile of the faces, how wonderful they are. And then both of them, great detail on the hair. And you can see. One of the reasons I like to do the videos is that I think you have a chance to see the dolls in a little more of their actual size. It's so difficult when you look online or look in the catalog to really get an appreciation of how things are in relation to others. So this is a good opportunity. And then the painted eye characters, which many people prefer. They think they have more a lifelike look to them. So it's a matter of taste. The painted eye are the rarest, but the glass eye are very preferred by people. And I put these three out because not only do they have really extraordinary faces, we have a Kessner, we have a Bruno Schmidt, and we have a Simon & Halbig. So all of very, very prestigious German doll makers, and I love the costumes on all three of them. This little girl in the blue, I mean, she is such a sweet little child doll. She is so prim and proper. Her costume is exactly appropriate to her face. She's very, very precious. Even her little bag, her little beaded bag. A wonderful group of dolls.